It's time to get you caught up with all things sports.
Yes! 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 Yes!
On the throw-in.
One thing is certain. None of this is possible without you, the listeners.
From baseball, football, wrestling, and more, covering local Cincinnati sports stories, news, and highlights.
Why is he always calling me meat?
With your host, Justin Trento.
When it's all said and done, we're going to look back and remember this is what started it all.
Available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Let's play the ball! Let's play the ball!
Alrighty, well, what's going on, everyone? A very, very, very happy Wednesday evening here on the throw-in. Justin here for another 2 hours on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. We got a lot to cover tonight. I just want to, wherever you guys are at, I got family out there on the West Coast. We've kind of been dealing with rainstorms here the last few days. So wherever you guys are at, I just want to wish you guys the well safety. It's the midst of winter time. We're at the end of January. This is kind of when things get wet and sticky. So wherever you guys are at, if it's hot, cold, rain, shine, snow, just be safe out there. Always got to do it. I had a wonderful last couple of days. Can't wait to talk about that to you guys here. Kind of been working with Steve over there at Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. If you haven't heard about that podcast before, we've been talking about them on our program. He actually joined me back on over the weekend. We aired a interview on the show Monday, and then if you just wanted to watch that interview alone, you could watch it on our YouTube channel. It's also available on audio, so you can't miss it. And over the last several days, I'd say like solid week, we really been just collaborating left and right on possibilities when it comes down to WrestleMania season, right? Biggest time of the year, so to speak. So, we've been talking about, a lot of wrestling lately. I was on his podcast last week. I did an interview with him on Saturday. And then, I was kind of the last time I heard about his upcoming schedule, because Royal Rumble's coming up this Saturday. He wanted to do a podcast and a preview of the Royal Rumble. And he has, there's another good friend that I actually just met for the first time today over a Zoom meeting. And his name is Randy Sizemore, local native. He knows a lot of, he's gone to like NWF local wrestling events. I think I met him once before, but he was also going to be on this this recording. And I get a text from Steve yesterday. He's like, listen, hey, are you open for tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm always open. That's just how I feel comfortable doing things. Let's collaborate, be on each other's show. The more, the merrier, right? It's all about just being out there. So I got things organized and fixed. And so this morning, Steve invited me, Randy, on his Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, which is now available, by the way, you guys. It's on audio. I watched about half of it on YouTube before getting ready for the show tonight. So, but we're kind of talking about, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about all the news that we're about to be covering here on tonight's episode. But our main primary focus was the Royal Rumble. And I've been thinking a lot about the Rumble and scenarios, and this is when creativity kind of gets the best of me, because there's so many different directions. And I think one thing you could take away from, this time of year, and especially in this year compared to previous years, is that there are so many. There's not just a one direction, one eyesight to see. There's thousands of ways that the WWE can go about leading up to WrestleMania. And what's great about it is that, we'll talk about Seth Rollins here later on, but Seth Rollins is dealing with an injury and he's one of your top guys. And we have built up talent strong enough that if Seth Rollins cannot make it to WrestleMania and he has to get surgery done, then I think that the WWE is in still pretty good hands, in my opinion. You can throw in a Drew, you can throw in a Damian Priest, you can throw in a Finn Balor, to temporarily fill his spot and exceed and hold the same expectations as if Seth was going to run it himself. So we got a chance to just elaborate tremendously on the show, talking about the Royal Rumble. And I'm still planning on talking about the Royal Rumble myself. So if you guys decide that you're going to go watch Armchair Booking's latest episode, and I believe it's called the Royal Rumble Preview, the Royal Rumble 2024 Preview and Predictions, let's make sure you guys subscribe to their channel because he's posting weekly. Watch the video, give a thumbs up, leave a comment, review it, listen to it, download it on all audio platforms. But just know that there are a lot of similarities compared to what I'm going to be saying between now and Friday's episode before we head into the Royal Rumble, compared to where things are going to be, So if you hear a lot of similarities, don't be alarmed. But before we could get into any wrestling conversation, some pretty breaking news coming our way. And that's because it's been official. I thought this was actually going to drag out a little bit further, but it's been reported by news. And currently I'm reading an article right now on CBS Sports, by Jonathan Jones. It's kind of big headlines. And it's being reported that he has a 5-year deal to return to the NFL after leading Michigan to a national championship with the Los Angeles Chargers. And I don't know about you, but this is blockbuster news. We knew it was on the radar. This wasn't a surprise. We knew that the Chargers were making a big push. That's not a surprise. What's a surprise is that there's ink to paper. And, the very first year that Jim Harbaugh returns as a head coach, he stays out on the West Coast. So you think about coaching for San Francisco. Now he's coaching for the Chargers down south. And the first challenge, one of the first challenges he's going to get this season, this coming up season in 2024, he's going to get a chance to face his own brother in the Baltimore Ravens. I think right then and there, Jim Harbaugh has, here's the difference with Jim. He has established quarterback for him. He didn't have to go out with San Francisco. He had to go out and recruit Alex Young. With Michigan, he had to bring in quarterbacks and develop them. What makes the Chargers such a great candidate for Jim is that the Chargers have a foundation baseline. So he walks in and there's something already established. And all you got to do is fill in the missing pieces. You don't have to break it down. You don't have to build it from the ground up. You just fill in the missing pieces. And you could simply do that in 1 year's draft. that's the power, that's the benefit of having Jim Harbaugh. He has the experience and he has the knowledge, the relationships with among players and football programs and at the college level because he's played so long. He's going to bring another. I think he immediately makes an impact. And if you're Kansas City, you come and find out this news today, and it may it should startle you just a bit. Baltimore could be like, you know what? When the time comes, the time comes. Right this weekend, but then when if you're Kansas City, you're like, we have not had a great season this year. And to be honest, I don't think we've really been pushed during the offseason to do anything spectacular. We are not the same Kansas City Chiefs that were Super Bowl champions last season. They're not the same dominant team they were a couple of years ago. And now with the Chargers adding an incredible head coach, and they're just pieces. The Chargers are pieces away. You stay healthy. And here's the other thing. If you're now on the free agent market, wouldn't you not be interested to maybe considering a Charger, being for the Los Angeles Chargers? Now, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. I'm not a Chargers fan. I'm still staying with the Rams, and that's because the whole incident moving up to LA from San Diego. But I got to say that this is such a big deal. And I wouldn't be surprised coming into this first year. We see Jim, we see the Chargers, and they're making a pretty depthly move into the postseason, AFC championships. Hell, we could even see as much as seeing the Chargers go to the Super Bowl next year. I know that's a big conversation to have. Yes, I agree. But that's how big this move could be. How often right now in today's, conversations, there's no other head coach that you can look at and say he is, he joins your squad. He is pulling the strings, in the carriage. And he's going, and you have the confidence in that he's going to be able to take you to the Super Bowl. And Jim Harbaugh has that ability, that presence, that entity. All right, he's done it. He's made it so close in the NFL. He took a step back and redid it at the college level, and now he's back. And not only he's back, he's stronger than ever. This is a game changer. You think about it for like the Cincinnati Bengals fans. This is going to be another challenge. This is another team that you have to now not tread lightly. You have to really now figure out how we not only going to beat the Baltimore Ravens, how can we maintain dominating the Kansas City Chiefs? But now we have to find a way to beat Jim Harbaugh. And as soon as you may think that maybe Buffalo's lost its edge, there's another team right there ready to take that spot. So some great news coming out of the coaching in the NFL today. Jim Harbaugh now leaves the open. Where's Bill Belichick going to go? There's a couple other coaches out there. Like I said, I figured that this decision was not going to be made until after the Super Bowl. I don't have a problem with the decision and how early it was made. I just didn't expect it right away. We've talked about this, but this is big news. Big news coming your way here to kick off tonight's program. The other big news was talking about, I know I covered this on the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast episode earlier today, which is available, by the way. But TKO and Dwayne Johnson is officially now working with each other. In a sense, Dwayne Johnson has joined the board of directors. He's also trademarked the name The Rock. Not surprising. But some good points. Dwayne is such a businessman. He's I look at him as a smart businessman. From time to time, he's one of your guys who you are maybe wanting to kind of take some notes on how he's been so successful in his career. He's taken a couple of great major risk, and look where it's gotten him. I think he's well-rounded. He's respected everywhere. Now there is a known public figure that is now representing TKO, WWE, UFC, and its future. And The Rock, if you know anything about Dwayne Johnson and his time with wrestling and his family and his rich, the rich wealthness of his family in the wrestling industry, I feel like this is right up his strong suit. He's able to give back. He's able to bring so much to the table and offer so much to the growth. And we've already seen so much transpire over this last year alone in the growth of the WWE that, with, Paul Levesque, aka Triple H, is at the, creative spot, reigns, and he's doing such a great job, by the way. And then you get The Rock part of the board of directors, which he will have some sort of a say in decision makings and, maybe helping keeping the WWE on that right path. This is only, just such a greatness. There's so many, there's just words that cannot describe what this does for this industry. So excited to see where that comes. You know what? We do have a big show for you guys tonight. Got a lot to talk about. I told you guys back on Monday we were going to talk about Seth Rollins and what happened on Monday Night Raw. Cody Rhodes and CM Punk had that that face off with each other. We will get into that here coming up in our opening segment when we come back from our break. I want to talk about Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame and a couple other things as we head into the road of the Rumble, which is this Saturday. Okay, so we'll talk about that and so much more. If you guys are watching us on our YouTube, Facebook, X account, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Feel free to get into the comments. Let us know what you guys think about these stories. You guys can also download us, listen to us at the Throw-In, anywhere you guys get your audio podcasts. And if you miss anything, you want to check out our interviews, blogs, all that stuff, check out our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. It's the epic center of our product. So check out our webpage at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a little break. When we come on back, we got a lot to talk about, so let's get the night rolling. You guys are listening to The Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, welcome on back here to the Throw-In on a Wednesday evening. I hope wherever you guys are listening to this episode, it finds you well. Couldn't have done any of this, so we got to give a big shout out to our friends with StreamYard Studios, where you can create podcasts, videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. start implementing some new grooves, new music, all that fun stuff there. All right, so we got to kind of backtrack in order to move forward, because when we do an episode on Monday night, we do get probably about 2/3 of what's going on Raw, but they're still developing stories, and sometimes I'm just not going to rush into a story until I can understand it just a bit better. But one of the biggest stories coming into this week in the WWE as we head to the Rumble was Seth Rollins, who defended his World Heavyweight Championship last Monday against Jinder Mahal, which I don't think I saw Jinder Mahal on Raw this previous Monday, which is kind of interesting. You kind of pushed him into the title picture just to quickly forget about him. But during that match last week, Rollins sustained a knee injury, and he got an MRI done, and it revealed that Seth Rollins tore his MCL and partially torn his meniscus. And now the red lights are flashing up in WWE headquarters, because we're on the road to WrestleMania. And Seth Rollins, at least as your World Heavyweight Champion, is probably being considered as one of the main events at WrestleMania. He's definitely earned it yet again. I mean, he's done a lot. He's carried this title, wonderfully. He has defended it. He's been a great champion, regardless if he drops it or not. So, but heading into Raw, I think there was a bit of a question of whether the WWE was going to do whatever it takes to keep Rollins as champion as long as possible, or was that title going to be vacated? And if so, how are they going to resolve this issue? Well, Monday, Seth Rollins opens up the show, and he makes it very clear that his injury is serious. There is a time frame of 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer, and that he's going to, if the doctors say that you need surgery, he's going to do what he needs to do to be healthy. But then Imperium comes out, interrupts Seth Rollins, and this kind of took me by surprise, because this is the first time I've seen Gunther impose himself into the main title threshold. And Seth Rollins says, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I will walk in and walk out as your World Heavyweight Champion. And so now the ball's been set, or the ball's hit back into the other court. The WWE, it looks like the WWE is going to protect Rollins and that World Heavyweight Championship as much as they can between now and WrestleMania. So maybe Seth Rollins could have been scheduled for a match at Elimination Chamber. I doubt we see that. Seth Rollins has been competing on the Raw brand on a weekly basis. That's going to be put to a halt. He's going to WWE is going to reposition Seth Rollins where he can still be out there. He can maybe do some commentary. He's going to still be seen on a weekly basis, but as far as action wise goes, he's not going to be a part of any of that. And this is a bold move. The WWE has done a lot to protect their wrestlers. And we've seen it on live television before, earlier this year, throughout the month of January alone, where if athletes are questionable of continuing, they will stop the match and not continue if it's necessary. We've seen it. And I know for a fact that, WWE, they have some of the best doctors in the world. They have really well training, and you need that for a company as big as the WWE. But this is a bold risk. Now, I don't know. I'm convinced that Seth Rollins is going to drop the title at Mania. I think maybe a little small break as we see other talent build, throughout the last several months. So it's just getting there and making sure that Seth Rollins is good enough for a WrestleMania match. And if so, then all is well that ends well. I guess, is that the figure of speech that you would say? But the WWE has made their decision. They're gonna, move forward with this, and we're gonna see where it takes us. Now, keep in mind that Damian Priest still has that Money in the Bank contract in that briefcase that gives him a title shot anytime, anywhere. And so now we start maybe twirling our head, brains a little bit on trying to put the pieces together of how could Damian now cash in that title or that briefcase and get a title opportunity. Because he doesn't have to focus on Seth Rollins. He could do this at any time, any place, anywhere. And a lot of people actually thought that Damian Priest could have done it on Monday. Take him out of action. And that would have been a bold, move. And, I know that the Judgment Day is kind of crumbling down, but Damian Priest as a single, competitor, he's been getting a lot of, praises. He's been impressing a lot of people. And so I just, that would be a whole different, I just don't know how you would see that working. Like Damian Priest cashing it in, becomes champion. Then now Damian and Finn is going into a tag team title, match this Monday. I was also one to be a favor towards seeing a feud between Damian and Finn for the World Heavyweight Championship. And as we talk about the Rumble later, I'd argue that case. But I just hope that this doesn't do significant damage to Seth Rollins down the road. And I hope that whatever storyline is presenting or is building up for his WrestleMania match, it doesn't tarnish because of this injury. Another highlight of the WWE of Monday Night Raw, particularly this past Monday, had to be the face-off between Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. And things kind of got pretty intense, and you could start seeing a nice feud being developed. And where does this lead towards WrestleMania? You got Cody Rhodes, who has this goal to become WWE champion, and that's Roman Reigns. And so Cody is heading into the Rumble as looking to win the Rumble once more and get another opportunity. He feels like he's ready. He's gone through Brock Lesnar. He's competed against, a handful of guys on the Raw roster, recently Shinsuke Nakamura. And so when I look at this feud, could there be something working for the next few months? Sure. But you can always start this aggression, this type of feud, put a pin in it and say, we're going to return a bit later. And that's what I think that we could see happening. This also helps, CM Punk has yet to have a match in the WWE. Yes, he's had some house shows matches, but nothing on television. And this Saturday is his first in-ring return on on an actual Raw, SmackDown, you know, PLE, that means something. And so, you know, and I know that there's a lot of people out there pointing towards CM Punk to win this Rumble. But you know, you have a guy who just returned back to the WWE, yet to have a match, and I just don't know how quickly the WWE is like, all right, let's go ahead and put the title on Phil. In my eyes, I don't see it happening. But then if you know, and I have some other conspiracies that could lead towards WrestleMania that then will possibly leave out Punk, you know, in a storyline. So, but they both took shots at each other, not actually at the beginning of this, you know, these promos, they were complimenting each other, and then it got intense because Punk, you know, and it seems like everyone who is getting into a feud with Cody here lately has been using their relationship with Dusty Rhodes. You know, it's interesting because, you know, this generation of talent that we see today has been heavily influenced or coached among the American Dream. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, has played a major impact on a lot of these talents. Drew, Roman, Seth, CM Punk, obviously, you know, Finn. So you look, you know, Kevin, Sami Zayn, they all grew up going through the NXT, going through the rankings, and they've had to come across Dusty Rhodes. And at some point, Dusty's given them some guidance, some knowledge, some information to kind of help them push their career along. And CM Punk is one of those guys. And so then it gets very personal now when Cody is hearing that stuff. And, you know, whether this was all scripted, whether this was all legit, it created a good storyline, which I really enjoyed seeing. And that was the important part, right? You know, we've been prone to seeing WWE feuds over the last years being so heavily scripted that it takes the authenticity away from from the feud. So to be able to come out and cut a promo, but you know, we were talking about this on Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast earlier today, and one of the notions about when you bring up Dusty's name is like bringing up the Flair's name. You know, you wonder if there was a clearance that Punk got from Cody prior to doing this, because you do take stabs at a legacy family, and sometimes, you know, you go too far and it doesn't become a work anymore, it becomes a shoot. So, but this, like I said, this feud that we're potentially seeing, I would personally put a pin in it, hold it up, maybe a SummerSlam, Survivor Series, whatever you want to call it, and still go toward the line. But it makes an interesting, all right, what's going to happen heading into the Rumble? And that's what we're all talking about here. What could we see heading into the Royal Rumble this Saturday? And one of the things I can honestly see is CM Punk costing Cody a Rumble victory, which then puts him on a setback from getting back to Roman Reigns and that WWE Championship title. And then you can, you know, maybe you put Punk and Rhodes at Mania, but then a question you have to ask yourself is why. The question that I end up asking in this sense is where is that story being finished? You know, do we officially hold that off until next year? Because there's been stuff that's been said about this feud that makes you think that if it's not finished now, then you won't see it finished down the road. All right, let's take a break. Come on back here. Let's see what I have coming up. we'll still talk about the Royal Rumble, Tropicana Field, this coming up Saturday. So we'll take a break. Come on back. Head to the bottom of the hour. You guys are listening to the Throne on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Well, welcome on back here to the Throw-In, bottom half of hour number 1 coming your way. We're just having some wrestling conversations here this evening. We will return to football conversations Friday as we get ready for championships to be crowned in the AFC, NFC. But I kind of want to really just jump back into the conversation of Punk. Oh, no, hold on. Sorry. Oh, my goodness. Prematurely playing music throughout the program. All right. Well, I want to jump back into a little bit more of the conversation with Cody and CM Punk about their promo shoot and possibly seeing this either a feud heading into WrestleMania or a work that can be used as a feud down the line. And when we look at Cody Rhodes telling this story, I mentioned this earlier. I don't logically see a triple threat match between Dwayne, Cody, and Roman at Mania. I also don't see, what could work is seeing Cody and Roman and Cody and Dwayne having their single matches and Roman main eventing both nights at Mania. But that becomes, okay, well, if Roman beats Dwayne on night 1, but then drops it to Cody night 2, I think you contradict yourself. If you lose the title to Cody on night 1 but beat Dwayne on night 2, you contradict yourself. If Roman wins both nights, then I think for Cody, what is your next move? Where do you go from there? You've already spent the past year trying to earn this title once again. So, and then on top of that, if Roman loses, he's taking a big hit if he loses to both Cody and to Dwayne at WrestleMania, which then leaves me into Cody or Roman having one match, which then only also could lead to Cody not winning the Rumble unless Roman drops the title this Saturday at the Rumble in the Fatal 4-Way match he has coming up. And I really want to dive into that theory more so in an hour, but I guess we're here already. So let's talk about that. My prediction and how this could work out. Cody is desperate to win. He's desperate to win, to finish this story. But what's interesting about this story is that it doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be finished with Roman Reigns. I don't think it doesn't matter who has that WWE championship as long as Cody's the one who's winning it. Which then begs me to believe that if Roman has a match with Dwayne, why would they put Dwayne and Roman in Australia at Elimination Chamber? Unless, if you're putting at Dwayne and Roman at Elimination Chamber, that means you have Dwayne has not just one but 2 matches left in him, maybe even 3. Because if you're going to utilize Dwayne's final match you're going to utilize the match at Mania. That's where it fits best for me. Which means Roman's occupied at Mania. Then you go along to asking yourself, like we ask ourselves each and every year, what is that story for Roman Reigns? Who is that next person? Who is that person that can dethrone Roman and become the new WWE champion? And when? How long is this title reign going to run? Roman Reigns is sitting in fourth in the history books behind Bob Backlund, who has like 1,400 days. And then like 30 days later, it's Hulk Hogan at number 2. And then it's Bruno Sammartino, which I don't think Roman will ever pass Bruno Sammartino. So unless you don't have Roman defending that title at Mania and you just stick with Roman and The Rock, and Roman wins this match at the Rumble and he goes on for another year, you could pass Hogan, you could pass Bob Backlund, and you could always write this story for next WrestleMania. Possibly. I haven't done the math. Don't hold me accountable to it. But I don't see that happening. And if you I also believe that WWE is a bit smarter. You don't have Vince McMahon as your creative leader anymore. Hunter's been doing a pretty stand-up job lately, and I think he also has been listening to the fans. Therefore, if you're listening to the fans, and I'd be stunned to be the only person on this planet that could think this could possibly happen. But have him drop it at the Royal Rumble so that he can only focus on Dwayne Johnson. And what's great about a fatal 4-way match is that Roman doesn't have to be pinned in order to win, in order to lose the title. You have AJ Styles, who came back from, I believe, injury, right? LA Knight, who's been probably one of the hottest SmackDown talents there is since this past year. And then you have Randy Orton, who came back from almost a career-ending surgery, couple of surgeries, if I'm not mistaken. And he's the only one that logically has a reason to go after Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And see, in my opinion, this would have just been a singles match with Randy and Roman. But then you also consider, the state, the health and mind for Randy and for Roman, as close we are to WrestleMania. You can use, AJ Styles, LA Knight to work most of that match. And so my theory is, if you get Dwayne and you get Roman at Mania and that's the only thing you have, drop the title at Royal Rumble. And the only other person that logically fits the bill that could use a title would be Randy Orton. There's no promises that I think Randy Orton has another title run. And there's no promises that Roman's here next year. He's had a couple major surgeries. I think Roman's is a ticking clock when it comes down to a retirement, to the type of wrestler you're going to get out of him. The best days that you're going to get out of from him moving forward are right now. So why not, if he's on, even if it's a small title run, it's still a title run. But why not put the title on him now, this Saturday, and then it gives you the reason why Cody wins that Rumble. If not, like I said, I still think that CM Punk can eliminate. I think CM Punk eliminates Cody. Cody's going to have to wait off a little bit more. He may have to go into the Elimination Chamber and earn it that way. But then we'll see. But then we can see a Cody versus Randy. As I went back to this, Cody doesn't need to beat Roman Reigns. He just wants to complete the story. and you think about the history that between Cody and Randy, and back in the days with Legacy, taking all those trips, we've heard about it in interviews before. It wouldn't be such a sweeter part of WrestleMania or even this storyline if Cody's the one to beat Randy Orton. And you just get that out of the way. For me, you talk about dream scenarios and you talk about what you could get fans hyped for. I'm 1000% that fans would back into this story, would believe this. And then you have not one, but now you created two main event matches that Randy and Cody for night 1, Roman and Dwayne night 2. And I think you're making some magic. You're making a lot of money. And it gives you the reason why Cody, you kind of create this element like they've done to Shawn Michaels before, where you put where you're throwing in a scenario where the urge of and desperation that Cody has to have to finish this story may just become a hindsight in the rearview mirror when he comes and gets eliminated at the Rumble and then has to find a way to get another opportunity. Remember Shawn Michaels in his retirement, how he had to face The Undertaker, and so he set himself out to go win the Rumble, got eliminated, ended up costing Taker the title at Elimination Chamber, which then ultimately led for Taker to accept the challenge under the condition that Shawn put his career up on the line. That right there was a great story. And I know this is a bit different, but see, from my understanding, Cody Rhodes has even said that, listen, this year has to be the year. I'm not waiting around, and being pushed off to the side if this isn't happening. I don't see any other way. I mean, yeah, if you can guarantee me that Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes can have another match next year at WrestleMania, and that's the year where Cody, dethrones Roman from the title, then I'll be open to it. But I feel like you have two great matches now that I don't think you'll get an opportunity next year to have these same two opportunities. It's better late than never. I know we've been talking about Dwayne and Roman for years now. And since it's practically at our fingertips, you guys, make it work. Now, that does leave CM Punk a favor at the Rumble, but I have another story to tell with that, which then ultimately leaves Punk out of the Rumble. And see, Cody could take cracks at Bob Orton, and Randy could take cracks at Dusty Rhodes. And it's a back and forth. And like I said, you still have a future feud because you could always bring that WWE Championship to Raw, and Punk could be on Raw, or Punk could go back to SmackDown, and you could still have this feud that leads to Punk, because it does logically make sense to me. Punk wins a title. I don't think it'll be at Mania. Maybe it's SummerSlam, maybe it's Survivor Series, whatever the case may be. It could be Cody who's the one who dethrones him. But the greatest part of this entire scenario that we're talking about here tonight is that Roman doesn't get pinned this Saturday. Therefore, if he decides to take a hiatus for whatever reason, maybe health reasons, he's been up on the top of the food chain for quite some time. Maybe it's time to step away. You can see Roman come back and insert him as the number one contender automatically for whatever he wants. He doesn't lose credibility. He doesn't lose, he doesn't lose his place in line. And I think it just automatically fits well. guys, I know it's a bold prediction, but I think it may work. The Royal Rumble this Saturday, January 27, 2024, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, available on Peacock, Tropicana Field at St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm excited. Hour number 2 coming up next. When we come on back, I want to go ahead and talk about the Major League Baseball Hall of Famers that were announced last night. Got some updated news about some deals and free agency signings and much more. You guys are listening to The Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, well, we're just rolling right along into hour number 2 here on this Wednesday afternoon. Want to give a big shout out to Spreaker from iHeartRadio. It's not just an audio listening app. You can download podcasts, you can see view analytics, and you can also monetize. They have a large distribution among audio platforms like Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, obviously. For more information, check out their free options at Spreaker.com. It's been kind of quiet with some local sports here. Cincinnati Bearcats ended up losing to Kansas. They won't, back on Monday. They won't play until later this weekend. We also did see Xavier fall short to Creighton, 85-78 over last night. Xavier moves. They lost against the number 17 team, seeded team. They actually had a 1-point lead heading into the half, but just kind of slowly fall apart. They lost second half by 8 points, which then ultimately gave them a nice 7-point loss there in last night's performance. They moved to 10-9, and their next big East game will be this Sunday at UConn. Tips off is at high noon, and I think it's a bit just. They're not terrible, they're not bad, but they're not good. And there is a high expectation of college basketball here in the area. Cincinnati's not really doing so great, but they also joined a new conference, and I just think that there is a level of struggle that Bearcats have, and when one team struggles in Cincinnati, you expect the other team to kind of lift them up, and 10-9 is not a bad record, but nothing really too excited to be talking about this year. We're just counting down the days to spring training. In other words, we'll talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame here in a moment, but we have to mention a couple of NL Central deals that took place. Obviously, we heard about the Matt Carpenter returning back to St. Louis. He had a down year with the Padres last season, and you kind of just hope that he continues, just knock on wood. But, it doesn't help us if he comes back and he has a substantial season. We don't really know how far he'll go, but Matt Carpenter back with the Cardinals. But the Brewers did some action signing Royce Hoskins to a 2-year deal. Was it yesterday, I believe? 2 years worth $34 million contract. Royce missed all last year after tearing his ACL during spring training. Back in the previous year, back in 2020, his batting average was 246, 30 home runs. He had 79 RBIs, and he had 145 hits in the game in the season. He's coming in. He's 30 years old. Probably going to be a designated hitter along, maybe playing some first base. Probably going to be using him for his at bats. And it's. I think if you use him correctly, he can be a dangerous entity to the Brewers. I mean, this is a team that is looking to hopefully get back to their playoff ways, like they've been for so many years. St. Louis is trying to still, to really. St. Louis is trying to climb. I don't know if they're going anywhere this year. I still think that they have a couple more years left on their squad. But Milwaukee's always trying to find a way. And I think this is the first time where you see, all right, a lot of contracts are coming up. This isn't the same team that the Milwaukee's been carrying the last couple of years. They just also hired a new, head manager, as Craig Counsell went to Chicago, I believe. Was it Chicago or? Let me look into that really quick. Chicago decision. Yep, he was from the Brewers to the Cubs, and so we'll see. We'll see what type of manager he really is, if he can take the Cubs to a postseason. I know the Cubs were in second place, just a couple games shy of a postseason opportunity. But you're seeing deals around our division, and you just can't help but wonder if this is realistically all we have to bring to the plate in comparison. I mean, if you put Royce Hoskins up to a guy like Jeimer Candelario, I think the only, about the same guys, I think, and to me, I think Candelario barely wins. I think a lot of other people eyes Royce Hoskins a good candidate, because we really are uncertain about that first base position. I know, Christian Encarnacion Strand is probably the goal is to get him at first base throughout the year. But then you have Spencer Steer that will probably fill in a lot of your right-handed at bats in the outfield. So, but Royce Hoskins is also a conversation piece, maybe towards a guy that if he has a decent first half, you could put him up on the trade market, throughout July and get maybe a pitcher, or a position player wherever you look at. So, when you look at your own division like Milwaukee, who's taken advantage of this, and they could very well do the same thing, you're like, well, what are we doing here? I think the only thing that scares you is that this is a 2-year deal, and he's getting $35 million practically. That is, if he cut, I'm really dumbed here late at night doing math, but 34 divided by 2, or no, not times by 2, divided by 2, that's $17 million a year. So when you're thinking about a July trade, I'm sure teams will pick him up, but they're going to ask the Reds to eat a lot of that contract. I will finish paying him this year, but then, which then makes it maybe he'll only be worth maybe like $8 million, but then you have to pick up next year's contract. So now you're really spending $25 million on a guy for 4 months, and that for me, for a guy like Royce Hoskins who just got out of an ACL surgery, didn't play at all last year. We really don't know what he's going to be looking like, heading into this year. As a fan of a player, I hope that he's well, but as playing against the Reds, I hope he doesn't bounce back as well. And you just don't know how well he's going to bounce back. Yeah, 2022, he batted 246, nothing really all that impressive, to be honest. I think that's actually below par. Had 30 home runs, and I think that's the only thing that stands out is the 30 home runs. And so that you're hoping you're getting that Royce Hoskins that could give you the 30 home runs again. And yeah, he'll do some damage for the ball club, but if not, then he may just be a wasted contract. And that's where I think I draw the line too. And I'm happy that we didn't get him, because I know Jameer Candelario didn't cost that much. And, you know, that's another prime reason of how Major League Baseball, you know, and the free agents that are still available, that's one of the issues we're looking at. Now, hopefully, as we creep closer to spring training, as we creep closer to the regular season, these contracts start dying down and we can maybe jump on one or maybe even two of them. I would love to see that, but the prices are going to have to cut down tremendously. Gosh. The class of 2024 from Major League Baseball, voters have been in, and I've never really quite understood this concept. And it's a panel of voters. You got to get above a 75% in order to be voted in to the Hall of Fame of that year. You get 10 years of opportunity. And then afterwards, you know, if you don't get in, it's going to be up to a panel of writers that are like 10 years later to determine if you're worthy enough to get in. And I just didn't quite understand that. It's either a yes or it's a no. You get, you know, and if you don't know, you don't have a choice. You just don't vote. And so you're really just marking a yes or leaving it blank. And so there's a handful of guys that have been selected for the Hall of Fame this year. We saw Gary Sheffield, tremendous ball player, I believe, in personal opinion. He did not make it in. This was his last and final year. And now it's going to come up with some writers, or it's going to depend on some writers, 10 years down the road from now to determine if he belongs in the Hall of Fame. And I'm sure those writers in 10 years probably really don't have a case to put him in to the Hall of Fame, which bugs me. Now I provide a little sweet spot when it comes down to Hall of Famers, because I do like the I do like I think a lot of ball players have earned the opportunity, but there has to be an elite line of saying, what have you done this year? Or I think there's a lot of factors being played. How long have you played in Major League Baseball? How long have you, what were your, stats? Who did you play for? What did they do during the time that you played on their team? How did you contribute to their success or failures? Then I'm looking in comparison, because the game has changed over years. How did that, you have to look at it at a narrow window. Adrian Beltran, for example, played, all these players. Adrian Beltran, Joe Mauer, Todd Helton has all played in a time where, you didn't have the pitch clock. You didn't have the runner on second and extra innings. The dimension to base, to fielders were, still being discussed and compromised. So, but I just, for me, there's a bit, there are plenty of players that probably deserve to come, to be put in, and they haven't been put in. So let's kind of start talking about who we see this year. Now, I'm actually going to take, we see three players. The first one is Adrian Beltre, excuse me. He is a third baseman. He batted, mainly played for the Texas Rangers, played for the Dodgers a bit. But his WAR was finished off at 93.5. He had a total of 11,068 at-bats. a total of 3,166 hits, 477 home runs. He batted 286, which I think is pretty solid. He had scored in 1,524 runs. He's also held an RBI 1,707, 101 stolen bases, 339 OBP, and a 480 slugging. And I think certain numbers really stand out, like the batting average, slugging, on base percentage. You know, he was he did provide a threat. I mean, he was also a good conversation piece when, you went into town. I remember watching, like, when I went out to Padres games in San Diego back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago. You get the program, which was actually like a magazine, and they don't necessarily have that anymore, which I'm disappointed. Which basically it updated your roster, who was active and whatnot throughout the course of the year. And I still have those magazines, and it gave you information about the coaches, about the schedule, about your broadcast team, about some of your sponsors throughout the year. Maybe they picked a player or two to kind of do interviews and backgrounds on. It kind of included a poster that you could hang up. You wanted to go once a month to get the new edition of the poster to have all 7 posters. Well, in that, you'd get, here's what to expect this month. All right, we're facing the Rangers, the Red Sox, Minnesota. And their dangerous person is Adrian, for the Rangers, it's Adrian Beltre. Red Sox is, David Ortiz. And then you got, for Mariners, Joe Mauer, right? And they just kind of give you a description. So whenever I took a note, whenever you got a chance to be in, as, hey, you are considered as a threat or as a key highlight, hey, I'm coming into your town, I think you have to go without being noticed. And Adrian's one of those guys, that I think when you went into town, he's left his mark on teams. And so a nice, worthy enough, area that he's been able to, gain this, become a Hall of Famer this year. So I'm excited to watch that. I want to get into these other 3 guys, but we got to take a break. So when we come on back, we'll finish talking about the Hall of Fame, and all that includes. And then we'll transition back into the wrestling conversations as we wrap up our show here in hour number 2. So don't go nowhere because the Throwing will return here right after this quick commercial.
You are now in the presence of a king.
Presence of a King by Ballpoint. Something I just found before the show on Epidemic Sound. And I haven't actually heard of this track before, but I guess you can relate this to to Hall of Famers, because you've had to do something right in your career if you were going to be a Hall of Fame of any class, of any sport or anything like that. I mean, and we've seen it where maybe you'd question some Hall of Famers, like the WWE Hall of Fame. It's in my eyes, it's something that I think has gone a little far from what it should be, because Hall of Famers in my eyes is someone who's left an impact on that sport or whatever that category is. He's changed the game. It's a him or her has, male or female, has changed that game to better it some way or to thrive some way. You take a look at like the music world. Eminem is a Hall of Fame in my book. He's changed the game of music. George Strait, Garth Brooks. You take a look at Tom Brady. We've seen some of the greats with Peyton Manning. He's left a legacy and changed the game. You look at baseball. I feel like the voting is just a bit off. Not too far from where it could be or how it's supposed to be, but definitely a lot better than maybe what we see with like WWE in that standpoint. So we talked about before the break, Adrian Beltre being one of the inductees this year. Then we go to Joe Mauer. We talked, and I explained before the break that magazine at Petco Park you get every month, and inside the magazine you get upcoming opponents with a key player to look out for. And Joe Mauer was on it every time Minnesota came into town. Joe Mauer, man, what's interesting about these Hall of Fame classes now is that there's a lot of these guys that I grew up when I was breaking myself into becoming a baseball fan. And for the longest time, up until maybe high school, I was getting into, all right, I'm only watching Padres baseball. I only know about Padres baseball. Everyone else was kind of a blur to me. I don't think it was until I got into high school where I really understood how many teams there were, who was on what team. I started getting into all of that great stuff. But Joe Mauer was not a stranger when it came down to being a threat to the plate. He had great at-bats. His WAR was pretty low, 55.2. At-bats, 6,930. Hits, he's had 2,123. Home runs, he's had 143. His batting average was a 306. He scored 1,018 runs, RBIs 923, stolen bases 52, OBP is 388, slugging percentage is 439. So to me, what pops out of my attention, what gives me my attention here, is that that Joe Mauer had a higher batting average than Adrian Beltre. And I think that's, when you try to separate, okay, well, why is Adrian Beltre in and compared to Joe Mauer, and you get to the category of, here's the numbers, I think a 388, OBP and a 439 slugging combination is a great, residue of, hey, this is what he put out. You see the batting average of 306, and sometimes batting average of 306, especially back in the day, was more difficult to handle. We remember back with Tony Gwynn back in those days. So Joe Mauer, another great, he was a catcher from Minnesota. I think he was like, you don't see a lot of careers staying in one team. I think that's kind of gone these days. Mauer has definitely made it at a point. I mean, he kind of ended it for Minnesota. You can relate to Joey Votto when it's time for him to join, if he doesn't get picked up by another team. But that's just something, also an era that we won't see one person with a team most likely for their entire career. First baseman, Todd Helton. Ooh, I remember Todd Helton, Colorado Rockies. A lot of great stuff out of him. He put up some good numbers. 7,962 at bats. He's had 2,519 hits with 369 home runs. Batting average left off at 316. His RBIs is 1,406. 4 more than his run score, which is 1,401. Wasn't really too much of a base threatener. He was really mainly for his defense, his control at first base, and his at-bats. OBP was 414, and Slugger was 539. And I think you gotta have to give that to him. No, if you look at where he played at Coors Field, hitter's ballpark, right? It's also another thing to hit a lot of your home runs. But and I was listening to a little bit of Todd Helton's like story when he got informed about, interviewed about being in the Hall of Fame. He related back to Tony Gwynn, and I was just listening to it, and it was talking about, he was being asked was how were you able to hit all those home runs? How were you able to maintain contact with the ball? And he mentioned Tony Gwynn taught him a lesson or gave him the best advice. He was like, where are you looking at when it comes down to like locating the ball? And, Helton responded and I guess said, oh, well, I was looking at, the bill of the cap, or I was looking at the arm. And Tony Gwynn says, like, man, you're doing it all wrong. You want success at bats, you pick one spot, and then when the delivery goes, you just kind of move it over just a little bit. Or else you're going to be all over the place. And it makes sense to me. If you're not a baseball reference guy, then I would understand otherwise. But hitting, you kind of focus in on one thing. Maybe it's a letter. You try to focus around where you can eye the ball. So you're focusing maybe on the bill of his cap. I think that's a saying that a lot of people do. Maybe you focus on the left shoulder or the right shoulder, depending how he throws, and that way the focus point stays the same, right? And that there's not a lot of movement in the delivery process, and all you got to do is shift just a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right to locate the ball. But what I think I enjoyed about that story more was the fact that you have Todd Helton in Colorado, Tony Gwynn in San Diego. You're elaborating, and I didn't necessarily quite see that quite often. But then to see, and I guess you love always. There's not a bad Tony Gwynn story out there, in my opinion. So, maybe because it had to do with Tony Gwynn, I don't know. I just give in. And then we also have to congratulate manager Jim Leyland. He's managed for Pittsburgh, Miami, Colorado, Detroit throughout his tenure. He's recorded 3,499 games, and in those games, he's won 1,769. He's lost 1,728. So right off the bat, he's already done his due diligence by having a winning record as a manager. His winning percentage was .506. In 22 years, in those 4 teams, he's held 6 division championships, 3 pennant titles, and in 1997, he's won the World Series. He was a manager of the year 3 times, and he's one of 8 managers to do so in both leagues. I didn't necessarily grow up watching Jim Leyland, but he was a name that was brought up quite often in relations, and it's definitely. I know it's not easy to be a manager of a ball club. I don't think, especially 22 years. I think the tenure of a manager has declined recently because teams want to win now, not just you stick with the process. Like you see with, and that's rare because then you see like Bruce Bochy in there, and it's like, okay, well, that's one exception. A lot of times as we see managers today, they're kind of moving on at a rapid pace. And it's like, if here's a three to, it's like head coaches. It's like head coaches of the NFL. They're, I don't think you could have a longevity career unless you're just that good. Mike Tomlin is probably like the last of this era. I mean, okay, then you see John Harbaugh, so maybe he's up there in the conversation, but you rarely see in 10, 15, 15 years as a head coach with an organization. Same thing with the manager. David Bell, I mean, he did get his contract extension, but I get that feeling that if David Bell and the Reds does not produce a playoff run or even a World Series run within his contract, time frame, that I think they're going to move on from him. The Padres signed Bob Melvin, and I think at the very beginning of this contract deal, it was such a, all right, he's going, he has the right mindset. Well, did he? Because he barely lasted 2 years with the Padres. Didn't do anything significant. Matter of fact, took steps back. And now the Padres have Mike Schultz as their skipper. So that, if you're a team club like, the Yankees, we have Aaron Boone. I think you can afford, as long as there's some sort of success, that they don't change what's not broken. Like the Dodgers, Dave Roberts. Dodgers are always good. Go to the playoffs. You're not pointing fingers at anybody. Yeah, you can't win the World Series, or you could do it on a shortened season, but you're not pointing fingers at Dave Roberts. A lot of fans want to, but then no one's going to do it. At least not anytime soon. So, but congratulations to those 4 inductees this year. You get down, to Cooperstown, and you get a chance to hear all their stories. You get a chance to hear them as a human being instead of a professional athlete. And it's the hard work that pays off. It's what I think thrives a lot of people. I think it thrives today's ball players. I know a lot of players playing today grew up watching, these guys, and to see that they can make it to the Hall of Fame, it's like, all right, now I have a chance. I mean, you look at guys like Manny Machado, and when you look at guys, especially players that are in different, regions of the country, making it to the Hall of Fame. I mean, Ichiro Suzuki is going to be a Hall of Famer, and I think he's played a huge impact on how baseball has been changed today. So, congratulations to all 4 of those guys. I can't wait to see them being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. All right, let's take our last break of the evening. I want to get back to some more conversations heading into the Royal Rumble this weekend. So don't go nowhere. You guys are listening to the Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. All right, as we dive into our last segment, we got to give a big shout out to Epidemic Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack. And give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music link. For more information, check out epidemicsound.com. And one thing you guys notice on this episode, I'm going to try to do this, but I don't give these songs enough credit. Ice Pusher by Ollie. So if you guys are watching this, I have been, every time we played a Epidemic Sound song, we've been putting it up on the screen, and I'm actually going to work on including that down below in the descriptions after the show. So just so that to give it credit, because I mean, they allow me to play music, and I want to give them credit where credit's due. So, can't say no to that. So, it's been a really big, impactful episode tonight, talking about the breaking news that unfolded with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh officially coming together, and how that could possibly be heading into the regular season. You also got Dwayne Johnson becoming one of the board members to TKO. Really big heading into the future for the WWE. We acknowledged the Major League Baseball Hall of Famers that will be inducted into baseball this year. And we talked a lot. I gave you my big take. I think what the biggest take I could possibly give you when it comes down to what we could possibly see heading into WrestleMania, as well as even as far as this Saturday at the Royal Rumble. But so does that mean that I'm I'm predicting CM Punk to win? If Cody Rhodes, I'm still so believed that Cody Rhodes is going to get, is going to lose, is going to be eliminated. I don't think he needs another victory, in my opinion, at a Rumble. Would it be nice to see back-to-back Rumble wins? Of course. I would like to see back-to-back Rumble wins from him. I don't think he needs it. I think you give it to someone who may benefit a little bit more in a story mailing. And so, who do you have heading into? Who do you have else heading into the Rumble this year? Well, if SmackDown's being taken care of, I think it opens up to a new can of worms on Raw. Well, Punk is one of those guys. Drew is one of those guys. And I just had this conversation the last couple of days with Steve, because there are rumors out there. And like I said, as of right now, they're just rumors that there, and there's some speculations that we don't know the future of some of these talents. And there's names such as Drew McIntyre and Finn Balor that are contract are ending up post WrestleMania. Therefore, how much involved are you seeing, these guys, be the spotlight of WrestleMania? I still think they should be used in WrestleMania some way, shape, or form. But then Finn Balor is part of the Judgment Day. Now we've seen the cracks there. They're about to have a title defense here Monday night. And they could potentially drop those titles to DIY. That will then ultimately maybe start shattering the feud. And I would be one to want to see a Damian Priest Finn Balor. So how do you do that though? And I think that could be a WrestleMania match. But how do you do that? You got to find a way to get Finn that title. And, Steve was making a good point. It's a valid point that you're not going to put a title on someone that's about to walk out of the company. If that's the case, unless they have a contract in place for Finn, why do it? The second thing is that I could also legitimately see why, he's never won a Rumble. He's still a main event caliber. You could re-spark the feud between Seth and Finn, where, this is payback again, where, Seth hurt Finn after Finn won and he had to vacate that title. Maybe it's finally time to give that in return and Finn can win it at Mania. I also feel like Finn is also the perfect candidate to take care of Rollins at Mania and carry him. I think as long as he doesn't get hurt himself. But then I think it makes a perfect storyline where then Damian can cash in and beat Finn. And even if Damian doesn't cash in after the match, if he cashes in at, in the middle of the match, and maybe, Finn does the damage and then Damian's the one who pins Seth and then wins the title, so that you're not really officially putting it on Finn. And then you could always, I don't know how much longer he has, but you could always maybe see a match between Damian and Finn at Backlash while Seth Rollins get healthy. So for me, that is, yeah, you could come out here and throw out, oh, well, a lot of these guys, can make a case that they could win the Rumble, of course. Punk, Rhodes, Priest, Gunther can make a case. But it's trying to start putting together how these feuds could unravel. And maybe last year, a lot of this is just nonsense talk because even though it sounds good, Vince McMahon and creative teams kind of always went against it. Or never, you can't tell me it wouldn't even come across the table. But this year, we're kind of being given a little bit of what we want, right? So it's okay to kind of brainstorm out of continuity. Which leads me to the women's Royal Rumble match. We had this discussion earlier today in the Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast. And by the way, I would recommend you guys subscribing to their channel, Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, downloading them on audio platforms. They talk about wrestling. I've been on the last couple of episodes, and we did a kind of round table talking about the preview of the Rumble. And this was a conversation of who's going to win on the women's side. And then there's that argument of Becky Lynch. You could throw in Nia Jax all in that mix. We have yet to see Jade Cargill. But here's my disclaimer that I think works. Throwing out on why someone could win. Jade Cargill has not been seen since she signed with the WWE. I don't know the details. The last time I heard was Triple H said that, listen, when we're ready, we will use her and she will be ready to go. Is that the Royal Rumble? Sure, she could enter the Royal Rumble. But the only feud right now I see is either with Becky or Rhea. And so we could even see a triple threat match between Becky, Rhea, and, Jade at WrestleMania, which I think when it comes down to triple threat matches, I kind of get tired of it because we've been seeing it a little too much. But the reason why Jade doesn't fit the bill is that, she was built up pretty high in AEW. And so we're realistic, other than facing Rhea, who's current champion, who else do you think she's going to be facing? Io Sky? No. Now, I think it sucks because I know that one of the biggest feuds that we would love to see title, no title in the picture was Charlotte versus Jade, but Charlotte just had surgery, and therefore we're going to have to wait a bit longer to see that, and that's fine. So what do you do with Jade now? And I don't want to rush her into a storyline. I don't want to rush her into a feud or into a match if it doesn't make sense. And so realistically, I can see a Jade and Bianca Belair at Mania. That would be honestly a fun match to watch. So Jade for me is out of the picture. I can see Becky Lynch winning this. But then if Becky Lynch is going after Rhea Ripley, this field is already grown. It's already built. These are two top performers. They don't need an extra push by winning the Royal Rumble. And right now, I feel that there is some discrepancy with the women's championship on SmackDown. Io Sky has it, and you're trying to. I'm trying to find reasons or opponents or matches that could be suitable for her for Mania. And the only thing that comes through my mind is the crack within the Shield, and that's Bayley, who's this outsider now looking in on the Damage Control. She's kind of been off on her own, and Damage Control has kind of been not there for her anymore. So could we potentially see maybe Bailey win this, see a, heel to face turn, and then see Bailey take the title from Io Sky, since she's the one who's having to do it on her own? I think this moves on. I think, you have a couple, and, this moves on the storyline. This kind of brings it to a completion that we're looking for. And if you think about a Royal Rumble opportunity for Bailey, who's never won the Rumble yet, it would do so much more for this feud that we look like we're going to be seeing, between Bailey and Io Sky. And when you also look at it, I just don't see any good matches coming out. And this is nothing decrediting what Bailey brings to the table. There's nothing decredits especially what Io Sky brings to the table. But I feel like they lacked the build of Io Sky in this champion. Yes, at the beginning, this was an opportunity given to Io Sky, who could benefit using this title. But she's kind of hit the ceiling, in my opinion, at least from a fan base perspective. And there's just no one on the roster that creates a developing story that I'd be entertained by seeing, unless it was someone like Bailey, who is already a part of Damage Control. She's seeing a retaliation where she's been forced to do things on her own. Damage Control is not there on her side. And so, like I said, this Rumble kind of elevates this WrestleMania story for them. Now, it's not going to be a main event worthy matches, but you know what? I've seen WrestleMania matches or the Royal Rumble winners not have main event matches at WrestleMania. So who says that this can't, but this can also help elevate it, because Bailey Io Sky is not maybe it might be a PLE, but it's not a Mania match. With a Royal Rumble victory, now you're kind of elevating a little bit more. It gives you a reason to watch it. We go back to Jade Cargill, and you think about this. I mean, I'd like to also see Jade Cargill get her feet wet before she really dives into a championship run. You think about a Rumble match, Elimination Chamber match. If there is a feud, like I said, I would be stoked to see a Bianca and Jade right off the bat. Because for me, Bianca deserves that spotlight, and you could welcome in Jade Cargill, and whether you lose or whether you win, it don't matter. I just think that they will make money in that ring working together. So, boy, big show for you guys tonight. I think it went very well. I made some pretty bold predictions already out there, and we're not even out Friday yet. But I'm going out there on a limb saying Roman's gonna drop it, Randy's gonna pick it up. I also got Finn could be a good candidate to win the Rumble, and Bailey, a really good candidate to win the Rumble. 2 hours. Hey, listen, I've had fun. Hopefully you guys did too. If you guys are watching this on our social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, or like Steve called it, Twix, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Be sure to head on over to our website if you missed anything at www.tncsportstalkshow.com, where you can find all the latest episodes, blogs, audios, and much more. All right, until next time, thank you guys for tuning in, and you guys have a wonderful night.